Imagine this. It's 1940, and Europe is on the verge of collapse. In under 6 weeks, one of the world's most powerful armies, France, is defeated by Nazi Germany's relentless Blitzkrieg. What exactly went wrong? How did a country known for its military might disintegrate so quickly? The Battle of France was more than simply a military operation. It was a watershed moment in World War II, revealing flaws in Allied strategy and elevating Hitler to near-mythical stature amongst followers. From the frantic evacuations at Dunkirk to the devastating capitulation in the same train carriage where Germany accepted defeat in World War I, this chapter of history is both unsettling and intriguing. However, the German triumph was the result of a complex network of daring ideas, fatal miscalculations, and incredible luck. It's a narrative of lightning-fast tank divisions penetrating through the impenetrable Ardennes, fierce resistance, political instability, and the human toll of war. Join us as we unearth the mysteries of the Battle of France, the strategy, mistakes, heroism, and legacy it left behind. This is more than simply the story of a nation's demise. It is also about the successes and tragedies that molded the world we live in now. Stay with us, because knowing how the apparently inconceivable occurred will permanently alter your perspective on World War II. Chapter 1: The Spark of War. Before we dive into the battle itself, let's rewind a bit. The seeds of the Battle of France were sown when Germany invaded Poland on September 1, 1939. The world held its breath as France and Britain declared war on Germany just days later, on September 3rd. But even as war began, there was little action on the Western Front. This strange lull would become known as the Phony War, a time of waiting, of tension, with no major battles taking place. French troops were mobilized, but the real question was, what was Germany's next move? Would they invade France directly, or would they attack elsewhere? The answer came on May 10, 1940. On May 10, 1940, the Germans unleashed Case Yellow, an audacious plan that would strike through the heart of Europe. Their target, France. But here's the twist. The French army had spent years preparing for a direct assault on their eastern border, the mighty Maginot Line. What they didn't expect was a German breakthrough through the Ardennes, a dense forest thought to be impassable. German tanks, the famed Panzer divisions, stormed through the Ardennes, bypassing the Maginot Line entirely. By the time the Allies realized what was happening, it was too late. The German Blitzkrieg was unstoppable, and the fate of France was sealed. But this was only the beginning. Chapter 2: Dunkirk, the Miracle. By the end of May, the Germans had pushed deep into France, and the situation became desperate. The British and French forces, caught by surprise, were surrounded. The only hope? Dunkirk. Over 330,000 men, trapped in the beaches of northern France, faced almost certain capture. But then something extraordinary happened. Operation Dynamo, the heroic evacuation of the British Expeditionary Force, BF. Against all odds, civilian boats, naval ships, and military vessels worked together to rescue the trapped soldiers. This was a miracle, but it came at a cost. France was left vulnerable, and the Germans were only a step away from victory. By June 5, 1940, Germany launched Case Red, a final push to crush the remnants of the Allied forces in France. Despite a fierce resistance, the French army was no match for the German combination of air superiority and armor mobility. The Allies, now on a retreat, tried to hold the line at the Somme and Aisne rivers, but the German advance was relentless. On June 14, 1940, German forces marched into Paris unopposed, and the French government fled. The capital had fallen in a matter of days. But even after Paris surrendered, France had one last card to play. Chapter 3: The Vichy Regime and the Armistice. On June 22, 1940, France officially surrendered to Germany. The Second Armistice was signed at Compiègne, and a puppet government, the Vichy regime, was established under Marshal Philippe Pétain. France was occupied, and the French North Sea and Atlantic coasts came under direct German control. But even in the darkest days, not all of France was under Nazi rule. The Vichy government maintained control over the southern zone, which was technically free. But for how long? While the French government collaborated with the Nazis, a brave underground movement emerged. The French resistance fought back, sabotaging German operations, gathering intelligence, and paving the way for future liberation. Chapter 4: The Dill Plan and Brea variant. By late 1939, the Allies faced an evolving challenge. The Belgians, anticipating German aggression, had fortified defenses along the Albert Canal. This prompted French commander Maurice Gamelin to devise a daring strategy, Plan D, also known as the Dill Plan. The core idea? Move Allied forces into Belgium to establish a defensive line along the Dill River, stretching from Antwerp to Namur. It was a calculated risk, one designed to hold the German advance far from France's vulnerable industrial heartlands. But this plan came with its share of doubts. General Alphonse Georges, overseeing the northeastern front, expressed concerns about the Allies reaching the Dill before the Germans. The British were equally hesitant at first. Yet Gamelin's persuasion prevailed, and the plan was adopted on November 9, 1939. The Dill Plan didn't stop at Belgium. Gamelin saw an opportunity to extend Allied influence into the Netherlands. This became the Brea variant, where the French 7th Army would advance to Brea, linking up with Dutch forces. The challenge? The French would need to cover a staggering 175 kilometers to Brea, while the Germans, starting closer, had only 90 kilometers to traverse. Timing was everything. If successful, this maneuver would secure Dutch reinforcements and protect vital routes like the Scheldt estuary. However, logistical constraints and the speed of German forces cast doubt over the feasibility of this ambitious plan. Chapter 5: German Offensive. While the Allies prepared for a defensive showdown, German forces under Army Groups A and B were mobilizing. By early 1940, German intelligence had identified critical gaps in Allied strategies. These gaps would soon be exploited with devastating precision. The German plan relied on speed and surprise. Army Group A under Gerd von Rundstedt focused on a breakthrough in the Ardennes, a heavily forested region the Allies had deemed impassable for tanks. Army Group B, led by Fedor von Bock, would push through Belgium, luring Allied forces into a trap. Allied intelligence, however, wasn't entirely blind to German intentions. Reports from Swiss and Belgian sources, as well as aerial reconnaissance, pointed to a significant buildup along the Luxembourg border. French attaches even warned of a potential breakthrough at Sedan between May 8th and 10th. Yet these insights fell on deaf ears. Gamelin and the French High Command underestimated the speed and coordination of the German war machine. The belief that the Ardennes was an impenetrable barrier only compounded their complacency. On paper, the Allies had the advantage in tanks, artillery, and manpower. French heavy tanks, such as the Char B-1, were heavily armored and outgunned many German models. However, German tanks had better speed, reliability, and coordination. The secret to German success? Radio communication. Every tank was equipped with a radio, enabling real-time coordination. Their doctrine of combined arms operations brought tanks, infantry, and artillery together in tightly synchronized attacks. In contrast, many French tanks lacked radios, leaving commanders to rely on slower and outdated methods of communication. The French army had mobilized millions, but cracks were evident in their readiness. Logistical nightmares plagued their efforts, from shortages of basic supplies to poorly trained reserve units. Despite these setbacks, the Allies remained committed to the Dill Plan. The British Expeditionary Force prepared to defend key sectors alongside Belgian forces, while French armies covered the Gembloux Gap and beyond. But the clock was ticking. As May 1940 dawned, the stage was set for one of the most dramatic military campaigns in modern history. Chapter 6: The Initial Strike. May 9, 1940. At precisely 2100 hours, the German High Command broadcasts a single code word to its divisions: Danzig. This signals the start of Fall Gelb, a lightning-fast offensive through the Low Countries designed to cripple Allied defenses before they can respond. But the clockwork precision of the Wehrmacht nearly falters before the plan even begins. Tight security measures mean that some officers, accustomed to constant delays, are away from their units when the orders come. Despite this, the initial moves proceed with astonishing speed. Luxembourg is occupied virtually unopposed. Meanwhile, German paratroopers land deep in enemy territory, taking bridges, roads, and even attempting a daring assault on the Belgian fortress of Eben-Emael. This is Blitzkrieg at its most audacious, a storm of steel and fire raining down before the defenders even know what hit them. But here's the twist. While the Allies scramble north, the Germans' true intentions lie elsewhere. On May 10th, the skies over the Netherlands darken with the ominous roar of German aircraft. Over 800 bombers, fighters, and transport planes take part in an ambitious airborne assault aimed at paralyzing Dutch defenses. The result? Devastation. By the end of the first day, half of the Dutch Air Force lies in ruins, and their airfields are captured, though not without heavy losses for the Germans. In Rotterdam, German forces swiftly secure critical bridges, bypassing natural defenses like the New Water Line. But it's not all smooth sailing. At The Hague, the Dutch launch a fierce counterattack, recapturing airfields and forcing German paratroopers into retreat. Despite this, the Dutch position collapses when the Luftwaffe unleashes its fury on Rotterdam. The city burns, and the Dutch surrender. A harrowing price is paid, over 2,500 civilians killed, and a nation forced to its knees. Was this brutal display of force necessary, or a warning to the Allies of what was to come? Up next, the fate of Belgium hangs by a thread as the Germans turn their focus westward. Chapter 7, The Fall of Belgium. Belgium was thought to be impenetrable, with Fort Eben-Emael standing as the crown jewel of its defenses. Situated at the junction of the Meuse River and the Albert Canal, the fortress was Europe's most modern, until it wasn't. In the early hours of May 10th, German gliders silently land on the fort's roof. Teams of highly trained engineers deploy hollow charges, neutralizing the fort's massive guns in mere minutes. Below, paratroopers secure critical bridges, paving the way for the German Sixth Army to flood into Belgium. The Belgian defenders, stunned by the speed and precision of the attack, retreat to the KW line, 5 days ahead of schedule. Meanwhile, the French and British scramble to set up defenses, unaware of the trap closing in around them. Fort Eben-Emael was just the beginning. What happens when the Allies' strongest forces find themselves drawn into a battle they can't win? May 12th, the Battle of Honnut begins. Over 1,500 tanks clash in what becomes the largest tank battle in history to that point. The French, armed with heavy tanks like the Saumur S-35, proved more than a match for their German counterparts, knocking out 160 tanks while losing only 105. Yet the Germans hold the field, repairing their damaged vehicles and preparing for their next push. On May 14th, the Germans launched a frontal assault at Gembloux, only to be repelled by fierce French resistance. It's a rare moment of Allied success, but one that's rendered irrelevant by events further south. While the Allies celebrated holding the line at Gembloux, the real disaster was unfolding where they least expected it. Next is the Ardennes, a peaceful forest that turned into a deadly trap. Chapter 8, The Arden Breakthrough. While the world's attention was fixed on Belgium and the Netherlands, the true German strategy was playing out in the Ardennes, a region the Allies believed was too dense for a major offensive. By May 13th, over 40,000 vehicles from Panzergruppe Kleist clog the narrow forest roads. French reconnaissance spots them, but reports are dismissed as a diversion. By the time the truth is realized, it's too late. German tanks swarm across the Meuse River, smashing through poorly prepared French defenses. A relentless Luftwaffe bombardment breaks morale, and panic spreads. Within days, the front collapses, and the Germans pour into open country, heading straight for the English Channel. France believed its fortified defenses were impenetrable. What they didn't account for was the ingenuity of Blitzkrieg. Stay tuned to see how one of history's greatest military campaigns brought an entire nation to its knees. Chapter 9, The Fall of France. On May 19, 1940, amidst growing chaos, General Edmund Ironside, Britain's chief of the Imperial General Staff, met with General Lord Gort near Lens. Ironside urged Gort to break out and attack southwest towards Amiens to save the British Expeditionary Force. But there was a problem. 7 of Gort's 9 divisions were already fighting along the Scheldt River. He had only 2 divisions left for any potential counterattack. To make matters worse, Gort was under the orders of French General Balot, who had been unresponsive for over a week. Frustrated and alarmed, Ironside returned to Britain, ordering urgent anti-invasion measures as it became clear that the BF was in peril. Meanwhile, German forces under Guderian resumed their advance on May 19th, overwhelming the unprepared 12th and 23rd Infantry Divisions. Amiens and Abbeville fell quickly, isolating Allied forces in the north. By May 20th, German reconnaissance units had reached the English Channel at Noailles-sur-Mer. The trap was closing. A massive Allied pocket had formed. How did the Allies respond to this devastating turn of events? The story is about to get more exciting. The speed and coordination of the German advance were unparalleled. The Luftwaffe's Fliegerkorps 8 provided relentless air support, particularly the infamous Ju-87 Stukas, which decimated Allied defenses and supply lines. Equipped with radio communications, German forward units could call for airstrikes with deadly precision. Some air support arrived within 10 to 20 minutes, carving a path for the panzers. But this relentless advance wasn't without its own challenges. Logistical delays and the occasional Allied counterattack slowed the Germans briefly. Could the Allies exploit these delays to launch a counteroffensive? You'll want to hear what happens next. Enter Maxime Weygand, France's new commander-in-chief. On May 20th, he proposed a bold counteroffensive. The plan: Allied forces in the north would fight their way south to link up with French troops attacking north from the Somme. But delays in leadership and communication disrupted coordination. By May 23rd, disaster struck. The commander of the 1st Army Group, General Bellot, died in a car crash. His death left the Allies disorganized at a critical moment. British leadership decided to evacuate from the Channel ports, setting the stage for the famous Dunkirk operation. The Weygand plan was collapsing, but a daring last stand was still in the cards. Could Dunkirk become a miracle? The answer lies ahead. Chapter 10: The Siege of Calais. As the Allies scrambled to retreat, the Germans launched relentless assaults on Channel ports like Boulogne and Calais. In Calais, a valiant British-French defense delayed the Germans for 4 days, buying critical time for the evacuation at Dunkirk. Despite running out of ammunition and enduring constant Luftwaffe attacks, Allied forces held the docks until May 27th. Their sacrifice would not be in vain. Operation Dynamo was underway. Over 338,000 Allied troops were eventually evacuated from Dunkirk. What about the forces that stayed behind, though? How did this action change the way the war was going? The drama of Dunkirk continues. By mid-June, the French army, weakened by losses and stretched along a vast front, faced the full might of the German war machine. On June 10th, Paris was declared an open city, and just 4 days later, it fell. Though the French soldiers fought valiantly, their resources and morale were no match for the coordinated German offensive. The Maginot Line, once seen as an impenetrable fortress, was outflanked. German forces, bolstered by air supremacy, drove southward, ending organized resistance. As the French campaign drew to a close, how did the Allies regroup for the next phase of the war? The answer is both shocking and inspiring. Chapter 11: Armistice. Paul Reynaud's resignation on June 16, 1940, marked a profound shift in France's leadership and strategy. Discouraged by his cabinet's rejection of a proposed Franco-British Union, Reynaud stepped aside, paving the way for Marshal Philippe Pétain. The 84-year-old war hero of Verdun assumed power with a stark message: France would seek an armistice with Germany. Pétain's announcement over the radio reflected the grim reality. Defeat was imminent. Hitler, seizing the opportunity for symbolic revenge, dictated that the negotiations take place in the same railway carriage at Compiègne, where the 1918 armistice had been signed. This deliberate move highlighted Germany's reversal of fortunes and added to the humiliation for France. On June 21, 1940, Adolf Hitler made his dramatic appearance at Compiègne, sitting in the very chair once occupied by Marshal Ferdinand Foch. The preamble was read, but Hitler exited before the negotiations began, leaving the formalities to Wilhelm Keitel, Chief of Staff of the German High Command. The armistice was signed the following day, marking an official end to active resistance. By June 25th, a ceasefire took effect, splitting France into the German-occupied north and the nominally independent Vichy regime in the south. Imagine the weight of history pressing down in that railway carriage, a location of past humiliation turned into a stage for calculated revenge. What could this moment have meant for the spirit of France? How did it shape Hitler's image back home? Chapter 12: The Aftermath. The signing of the armistice marked the beginning of France's occupation, dividing the country into distinct zones. While northern and western France fell under German control, the southern zone, known as Vichy France, operated as a puppet state under Pétain. This fragmentation not only altered France's political landscape but also its global image. Amid the defeat, Charles de Gaulle emerged as a voice of defiance. From London, he broadcast his famous appeal of June 18th, urging the French to resist the occupiers and laying the foundation for free France. Meanwhile, Britain, wary of the French fleet falling into German hands, launched a controversial attack on French naval forces at Mers-el-Kabir. This act strained relations between the Allies, but underscored Britain's desperation to prevent German dominance. By 1942, German forces occupied even the so-called Zone Libre, erasing the facade of French autonomy. Resistance movements gained momentum, but the scars of collaboration and occupation left deep divides. The ultimate liberation of France in 1944 marked the beginning of a long road to healing, culminating in the re-establishment of a unified French Republic. Vichy France wasn't just a government. It was a symbol of compromise and survival under duress. But what happens to a nation when its leaders and its people must choose between resistance and collaboration? Chapter 13: Strange Victories and Unforeseen Defeats. The swiftness of Germany's conquest of France left historians grappling for answers. How did a nation with a formidable military, better tanks, and superior artillery fall in just 6 weeks? Historian Ernest May, in Strange Victory, argues that Hitler's success wasn't just about military might but a triumph of psychological warfare and opportunism. The Allied forces, despite having better intelligence resources, suffered from fragmented decision-making and underestimating the enemy's audacity. Key warnings, such as reports predicting a German attack through the Ardennes, were dismissed. Meanwhile, Germany's tactical flexibility, as evidenced by the risky yet groundbreaking Manstein Plan, exploited Allied missteps. Combined with luck and the Allies' disjointed response, Germany achieved what seemed unthinkable, a rapid and decisive victory. What lessons lie in these strange victories? Are they warnings of the dangers of complacency, or reminders of how quickly fortunes can shift in war? Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more fascinating tales from history.